Welcome everyone. This is the July Brookings second Saturday Art Walk, and for the first time in about 18 months, it's a live presentation in addition to this video version. And I'm here today with Linda Ross and Horst Wolf. Before we get into their talk, by the way, Linda, when did you first get into art?
I don't remember not doing art. I was always making things from the time I was a tiny child.
Okay, and let me regress a little bit more. I usually like to ask people where they grew up, went to school, went to high school. Where did you grow up and go to high school? We
traveled all over. I lived in almost all the states by the time I was in junior high. Some schools I was in for 2 months. We'd moved. So I kind of grew up all over the United States. I ended up going to high school in Sacramento, and I did some college there as well.
Thank you for speaking up. Horst, what about you?
Where I grew up?
Yes.
Munich, in Bavaria.
Okay. What age were you when you came to the States?
27.
Okay, so you did high school and all that other stuff?
All that stuff I did.
And you were an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And you got that degree, I imagine, in Germany.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In Munich.
Okay. That's an interesting... When did you first start doing art? Like Linda said, she was doing it when, as far as she can remember, kind of forever. Now, what about you? Did you start later?
Well, I started about when I went to grammar school. There, one of the subjects was drawing.
Okay.
So we learned primitive things like how to draw something in the distance, perspective, and all that. We drew soldiers that stood there in a line, and you saw how...
Sure.
So I did that, and I did that until the war started. World War II started. And then I quit because. And I started again when I retired from engineering about age 75.
Okay. And Linda, what about formal training? Horst mentioned classes when he was in grade school. What about you? What about formal training, formal classes? What have you got in your background?
I've taken a lot of art classes. I prefer just workshops. Part of my reasoning is I'm sort of the reverse of everybody else, and that I think art classes kill your spontaneity and your certain things that just pop out of you that say, do it this way, mix these things together. And you go to classes and they tell you, no, this is the way you're supposed to do it. And I think that hurts you. So, I took formal training on things that was important, like how to run computers and how to do programming and things like that. But when it came to art, it's like, I don't really want people telling me how to do it. I like having something in my life I can do my own way.
When was the last time you were in a workshop?
Well, this afternoon before we came in here.
Okay.
I was with the girls and we were...
Are you talking about the mudslingers, the ceramics group? Okay.
But, I've gone to like sculpting symposiums. I went to Marble, Colorado for 2 weeks, and I did, carved on marble for 2 weeks in the woods with a bunch of other people, and we all worked on our own things, and there were people that could show you better ways, better tools to use for certain things. The last class, I guess, was in Santa Barbara. I took a marble class, a marble carving class.
Okay.
But that's the last class I've had.
Very good. Horst, what about you? Have you been, since you retired, did you start then going to classes and workshops?
I did one thing. Liz James.
Okay, I've heard the name before.
She was a famous artist, And I took a class from her that was called Basic Training for Watercolorists. And that was the only art education.
Did you have to do push-ups and stuff like that because it's basic training?
No,
Okay.
but she told you what the colors were, that they were transparent and opaque colors and all that. So she said, I did teach you the basics, but I don't teach you what to paint and how to paint.
Yeah.
Teach you the basics, and I loved that.
Now, Horst, your works that are in this show are basically paintings, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And why did you choose what you chose to be in this show, these pieces?
I actually didn't choose them. Thanks to Linda.
Interesting.
I would have never had an exhibit. I'm too lazy, I'm too old. But Linda came to the house. She does these sculptures, you know, and she said, I need somebody to hang something on the wall. And I said, well, I'm not going to do it. She picked the paintings.
Okay.
Her husband and she brought them over here. They hung them. And here we are. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Linda, then what were your criteria for what you chose for this show?
I actually think Horst is quite brilliant, but even better than that, he's very artistic, but even better than that, he's so creative, and he's got such a great sense of humor. So I really wanted to get some of his things, his Martian paintings with his little stories, they're so humorous and they're so creative, and so I did a little group of them. I wanted to do some of his watercolors, and like this is kind of a combination piece. It's probably my favorite, What Happened to the Vikings. It's a really beautiful painting.
It is a
It's got
beautiful painting.
all sorts of little quirky things in it that you don't see instantly, but then you read it and you look at it and you go, it's just brilliant. And I mean, I just think these are so great. I really thought that it would be awesome to share them with everybody and let people see these things.
Okay, now let's transition to your work.
Okay.
How did you pick, or did you let Horst do your okay, how did you pick what you have in this show?
Well, some of them just came about because when COVID started, like I did this totem here, which is a fairly large piece. Took quite a while to complete because it's multiple pieces. And I needed something to preoccupy my time because we're all sitting at home doing nothing. And so I did that, and I did some other pieces, but I don't want to say that it was a bummer, but it was kind of not being able to go where you're used to going and doing the things you normally do. So the pieces just sort of are miscellaneous pieces. I did pick some of my favorites, which are like these mudmen of the Silicon Valley.
Right, and that's in the Artwalk flyer, if I'm not mistaken, one of those images, one of those pieces.
The reason that's my favorite is I'm always trying to capture something that's very ancient looking and somewhere in the future at the same time. And that's about as close as I've been able to come, is in those pieces.
Very good. I have to ask you a technical question. You mentioned that this piece, the totem piece, is done in segments. How is it physically held together?
Well, I built this wooden piece at the bottom, and I attached a pipe to the wooden piece that goes up through the middle, and then I have a cap on the top, so that way you can take the cap off, slide all the pieces off, move it, and then put it wherever you want it and reassemble it.
Are they interchangeable in any way? Could
Sure.
you mix and match them if you wanted to?
Well, with the exception of the top.
Right, exactly. Or the bottom.
Yeah, the top and the bottom have to be where they are, but
Interesting piece.
and they can swing both ways because there's a face on this side and a face on that side,
Okay.
and the pieces can be turned.
Now, Horst, Linda mentioned what she thought was her favorite piece of what you have in this show. What about her pieces in the show? Do you have a favorite piece of hers in this show?
Well,
And why?
Why?
Yes, why would you?
Very difficult,
Why
because
would you?
they're all pretty good.
Well, then what makes it so difficult?
Because they're all very unusual
Okay.
to me. And I don't think I'm able to pick
Okay, well, if you can't pick, you
one
can't
I
pick.
like best. In fact, I can't even tell you which one I don't like best.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, what about when you're working? What is your inspiration? We heard that Linda, like, recently was inspired by not being able to go places and do things, correct? What's been
Well,
your inspiration?
That's not really true.
Okay.
It's
Did I
inspired.
misinterpret?
Well, it's just that I had to do things because I couldn't go anywhere, but my inspirations have come from traveling around the world, and I really like watching people. So practically everything I do is based on observations of people.
And it's figurative in a way,
Generally,
in an
yes.
abstract way. Now, Horst, let me get back to you. How do you what inspires you, and what are you trying to say with your art?
I never think about that. I just start.
Okay,
Whatever, I see something, like over there, that village,
right.
and I like it. And like there, I couldn't paint it right there. I take a photograph and then I paint it. And I take my freedom and change whatever I don't like.
Sure.
I don't have a specific method. I just
Okay.
pick whatever looks good at the time.
And Linda, you?
I have visions going into my head constantly,
Okay.
and then whenever I'm doing art, they just sort of pop out, kind of randomly. I started a piece earlier this week that was going to be a bird. It's now a woman with two heads.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I change things.
Yeah, because many artists work just the opposite, very, very precise and planned out in how they do things. Now, I'd like to open up the discussion to people in the audience. You've got two artists that you can pose questions to, so please start asking your questions, but make sure you speak up because you're a long way from the camera.
Linda, do you prefer using clay rather than carving in wood and stone?
I'm gonna repeat the question for the camera.
Okay.
Do you work in clay and stone when you're doing a piece?
Well,
I asked, are you working more in clay? Is clay a better medium for you
Okay.
than wood and stone? Which
See, I screwed up the question already. So, okay, go ahead.
Actually, I love the way stone looks, and I really enjoy stone, but it takes a big compressor, it takes pneumatic equipment, and most of the pieces of stone I've worked with have been in the 200 to 600 pound range, and they take a lot of physical activity. I'm getting old, I'm getting weak, and clay is flexible, it's light. I don't have to go take a shower when I'm done working in clay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When I work in stone, I am covered in head to toe with dust all over me. I've got to put all my clothes away, I've got to go take a shower, I've got to clean everything up. The clay is just easy, it's friendlier.
Okay, good point. Anybody for Horst? Nobody for Horst.
Left them speechless.
I have a question for Horst.
Go ahead.
Why don't you tell people what your regimen is at night on when you work on your little cartoon books?
Well, first, let's go with the fact that I do only cartoon books anymore.
Little louder.
A little louder? Yeah. I work on cartoon books. That's all the art I do these days. I wake up with a rhyme in my head. After the rhyme, I make a poem that does make sense or doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense, I say, as long as it rhymes. And then I come up with a drawing that goes with it.
So you start with the words or the rhyme,
Oh, yeah.
and not with the picture.
No.
Okay, not with an image or anything. That's an interesting way to work.
And how many of these books have you done, Horst?
I just finished number 96.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll probably finish 100 this year.
Now, I asked you about what you like in the show of hers. What about what's in the show of yours that you like the best?
It's all good.
You just don't like to make a choice.
No, actually, I like the best my hobo paintings. You can't see it from here.
Okay.
It's behind that wall.
And what is it that you like about those hobo paintings?
Because I start without knowing what I'm going to do. And I work on it maybe for 3 days, you know, on and off. Whenever I'm bored, I start drawing and painting. And it's small pieces, some funny. Here there's a quote in Latin or English or German. And when it's all finished, then I take a darker color, a mid-value color, and I paint all the spaces in between those drawings out. So it looks like a unit.
Okay.
And I call them hobo paintings.
Is that why you call them hobo paintings, or is there another reason for it?
No, I call them hobo paintings because I invented that style.
Okay.
Hobo, Horst, wolf.
Yeah. And before I forget, most of your work here is in watercolor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because we know Linda's is ceramics.
Clay.
Yeah, clay. What about your piece? Is it the two pieces, one of which is in the artwork flyer? Are those your favorites in the show?
Yeah, my little men here with the beaded skirts on.
Yes.
Those are my favorites because I think they really do capture something ancient and something futuristic at the same time. And I like the combination of the rustic clay with the polished beads, and they're called mudmen of the Silicon Valley because they're supposed to be out of the mud and back to the mud. It's actually very lightly on the little helmet that you see. It's got programming in basis 8 for out of the mud, back to the mud.
Okay. When you're working, what do you find the most difficult? You know, is there any part of the process that you find hard to do versus the fun parts?
No, if it's not fun, I don't do it.
Okay.
Life's
You
short.
too?
Pardon me?
You too? Or are you motioning because you're empty?
I'm out of wine.
Oh, okay. Well, we can fill up later.
Okay.
Is there any part of the process that you go through that you find laborious? And I guess that's what I was asking you, that you find laborious as opposed to enjoyable. What about you, Horst? Is there anything in what you're doing? Is that why you're doing the cartoons now with the poetry? Because it's more fun than the other work?
Well, let me tell you the real reason. I got so many big pictures at home in shelves. I don't have space for more.
Sure.
You know, I sell maybe one every 2 months.
Yeah. Okay.
So, finding a great big little things that don't take much space.
Sure. That makes sense. Come on, audience, how about some questions?
Do you hide them under the bed?
Do you hide them under the bed,
All your
Horst?
paintings? I
Not-
know I do. They all
well,
go under the bed.
They're under the bed, but that isn't enough space. I have sort of racks where they're stacked, you know, very close to each other.
You know, that brings up a good question for Linda. Is storage ever an issue for is maybe the fragility, maybe one of the biggest issues you have? You have to be careful how you store the pieces?
I just keep shoving them on shelves and stuff.
Okay. But you have to have the shelves to...
And I put them in closets and, you know, different
Under the
things.
bed.
Under the bed, whatever. And everywhere.
And what about shipping your pieces? Like this one would be pretty heavy.
Yeah, well, I don't want to ship it.
Okay. Well, what if you have a buyer and they're out of state?
They're going to have to pay a lot for shipping.
Of course. Well, is there anything that I didn't ask you, Horst, that you'd like to volunteer for the audience and for the rest of us?
Well, I hear people say when I show my pictures, oh, I wish I would be that good, could paint like you. And I say, there's no secret about it. You just start painting and you paint a lot and you get better.
Yes.
And you got to like it. Period. That's it. There's no
Sure.
secret about it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I know.
Yeah. And Linda, why don't you paint, or do you paint
I
sometimes?
do paint. I
Okay.
paint all the time. I have all
Wow.
kinds of paintings, but I think too much of somebody's stuff can be boring. And the one thing I wanted today was to have a really interesting show for people. And I just think Horst stuff is 1,000 times more interesting than my paintings. So I wanted to have his.
Okay. Very nicely said.
You know, you do paintings, I also do sculptures. Junk sculptures, I call them.
Right. Found objects.
Found objects that glue and screw together and hang coins on them and stuff, and I have a lot of fun doing that.
Very good. Well, anyway, Horst Wolf, Linda Ross, the show will go on for the rest of July. And the hours at Manley Art Center are Thursday through Saturday from 11 to 3. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes.
I finally got it right.